Chat, today I'm proud. You guys want to know why I'm proud today? It's because a friend of mine who, I occasionally hang out with, played some Rust with, good person, Danny from Twitter, did something I would argue is quite brave,
Shadow
okay?
the Hedgehog, you got a small dick. It's the size of this walnut except way smaller. And guess what? Here's what my dong looks like. That's right, baby. Tall points, no quills, no pillows. Look at that. It looks like two balls in a bong.
So she did something I would argue is actually quite brave and went to a conservative conference that Ben Shapiro was speaking at, and with a completely hostile, conservative, transphobic audience, this trans woman went up, took the fucking mic, and challenged Ben Shapiro on his repetitive denial of the overwhelming body of science that validates the identities of trans people. Very fucking brave to do this when Ben Shapiro is up on the podium, he's got the microphone, and you're here in the crowd holding a microphone surrounded by people who very well might, at least one of these people would absolutely give anything to beat up a trans woman after a Ben Shapiro conference, don't get me, these people would absolutely, be down for it. So this is a very huge fucking brave move, in my opinion. And I want to point out a little bit more misinformation Ben Shapiro is spreading here. Ben Shapiro and leftists clash over transgenderism. Danny, who did this, in case you guys don't know, is like a DGGer liberal, okay? Like an edgy liberal DGGer sock dem. So I just thought I'd point that out. Not that Ben Shapiro could have known, but just to demonstrate how terrible conservatives are at understanding even the most basic political ideologies. They'll call liberals leftists on a whim. They literally don't make the distinction. I feel like it's a good insight into the level of good faith these types of people act on. Anyway, very proud of my friend here. Let's see her hold Ben Shapiro's little warm, sensual, tight, soft bussy to the fire.
Why do you believe you're right about trans people given the American Psychological Association, American Medical Association, American Psychoanalytic Association? I can go on for about 5 more associations that are very prominent and govern the existing health government or health industries within.
And it could have been worded a little better, but she's got it right. She's doing it.
The major Western countries. And all of these associations have multiple thousands of doctors, sociologists, psychologists, and with PhDs in their respective fields backing the idea that sex and gender are different, effectively gaining
the guy holding the mic looks like he wants to do a hate crime. There's literally nothing more, there's nothing more sensual to me. Nothing that gets me off more, that makes me want to empty my balls all over my fucking webcam while I'm streaming more than watching a conservative guy at a Ben Shapiro conference who clearly volunteered for this job and isn't getting paid, wearing a shirt that says, "I support free speech," with the biggest grimace I've ever seen on a grown man, holding a microphone up to the mouth of a trans woman who is pushing back against his parasocial daddy, Ben Shapiro. The fact that this guy has ended up in that situation makes me want to pull out my dick and just nut on my webcam on stream, just to demonstrate to you just how funny I find this situation this guy has ended up in.
the medical consensus for sex and gender being 2 different concepts, yet you have a different opinion.
Okay, so sex and gender are 2 different concepts, but gender is tied to biology. So one of the big problems that you see in sort of the argument in favor of trans rights is this notion that gender and...
Wait, hey chat, should I let this play first without interrupting it and then pause it and interject, or should we just do it like we normally do and just pause as we go? What do you guys say? Do I just let it play uninterrupted and then we go back over it, or do I just go over it as we watch it? What do you guys think? I want to know what you guys would prefer. Just interrupt Ben to do it like normal? Okay, yeah, so obviously she can't say this because she's got to give Ben Shapiro her turn, and this isn't a debate. This is a question, come up on the stage and ask a thing type deal. So if you don't get your gotcha in your question, you're basically you can't really add anything else. You're not going to have the opportunity to. But basically what Ben Shapiro is arguing here isn't even a refutation of what she just said. The idea that like gender and sex. So for one, Ben Shapiro has repetitively argued sex and gender are the same thing. They're exactly the same thing, and they are inextricably linked. He has argued in the past. So he's just lying right now about saying they're different things. However, nobody on the left disagrees that sex and gender are related, which is what he's arguing right now. Ben Shapiro's counter-argument right now is sex and gender may not be the same thing, but they're related. Nobody on the left, nobody from any of the organizations or the consensus of the medical community would argue against that, Ben. Nobody has said that's not true. That isn't an argument against what she just said or against the belief of any of those extremely well-recognized and well-trained medical organizations and the doctors that are parts of them, people who blow your brain out of the fucking water with their knowledge on these situations, okay? Like, that's not a response, Ben.
Sex are completely separable. They're not completely separable. If they are completely separable, then this means that identifying people by their subjective gender really has no relevance as to whether they are a male or a female. Male and female are biological terms. So using terminology like male and female to describe a self...
So, no, in our society, when someone is born with a dick and the doctor sees that, then the doctor says it's a boy. Now, that may mean the child was born male, generally. I mean, obviously, there's types of intersex where, like, a child could be born with a dick, but then they have, like, not XY chromosomes. They've got something else, some type of intersex, or there are people that are born with multiple types of genitalia. Obviously, we all know sex isn't a binary. It can't be. People are born all the time that exist outside of male or female, so the existence of those people just kind of debunks that idea. But nobody's arguing that sex and gender are completely different. The argument is gender is just the thing that we invented to make it more simple for us to interact in society and as a categorization for the people that we saw were born with dicks and the people we saw that were born with vaginas. The thing is, though, our science, our ways of viewing the world aren't just limited to penis and vagina anymore. We have other ways of analyzing groupings and categories of people outside of these people have dicks, these people have vaginas. That's how we discovered chromosomes, and we realized, wait, it's not just XX and XY, there's actually tons of types of intersex. And we realized that gender was more of this thing that we socially constructed to make society work easier. And there's not actually like a stone sitting out in the desert somewhere that God himself carved an actual an 11th commandment saying, actually, there's only men and women, boys and girls, that's it, penises and vaginas. If you try to extend it beyond that, then you're actually going against reality. There's not a tablet God wrote in out in the desert somewhere that we've yet to find that is actually the 11th commandment, and it says that. Unfortunately, we haven't quite found evidence that gender is anything other than this thing that we just made up to make communication a little bit simpler.
Self-perception of maleness or femaleness is sort of a bizarre way of arguing whether a thing is a man or a woman. So here's my question. It's an argument that my friend Matt Walsh likes to make. What is a woman? Define what a woman is without reference to the word woman, please.
Why do you have to define a woman without using the word woman to define it? Like, why would you have to do that? Why would that be necessary? Define a tree without saying the word tree. A tree is a plant, has bark, it's got chlorophyll and leaves, and they grow tall. And, like, you'd have a pretty hard time coming up with a definition for tree that isn't tree. Just because most people can't perfectly define a socially constructed noun, because that's what it is. Woman is a socially constructed noun. It would be harder to define than even tree. At least a tree is a thing that exists. At least you can go out into nature and see a tree. You can't go out in nature and see a woman, not the gender woman. You can go out in nature and see a female, but you can't go out in nature and see a woman necessarily and be able to say distinctively that is a woman. I mean, not even Ben could do that. If I showed Ben Shapiro a picture of like a famous trans woman model that he wasn't aware of, he'd probably assume that person was a cis woman and immediately call them a woman. And when he found out they were trans, lose his shit about it. Like, that's probably how it would go. Nobody can like go out in society, see somebody and know they're a woman. That's just not how it works. We don't have like a tangible, hard definition for completely socially constructed nouns like this. Ben's eyebrows are so fucking thick. If you think Ben's eyebrows are thick, then you are about to see Ben get absolutely Stacy down by the eyebrows of Danny here, okay? I don't know if you've seen her eyebrows before, but they absolutely, like, put Ben's to shame.
Self-perception of maleness or femaleness is sort of a bizarre way of arguing whether a thing is a man or a woman. So here's my question. It's an argument that my friend Matt Walsh likes to make. What is a woman? Define what a woman is without reference to the word woman, please.
So this is actually a logical fallacy called a red herring. You're asking me a question in order to actually challenge my question without actually
No, it isn't. I'm saying that it really is not. I'm saying that biology, I'm agreeing with you that the notion of gender, which is effeminateness or masculine.
Mind you, he hasn't acknowledged at all the question. She's completely right. He didn't acknowledge the question. Her question is, how do you reconcile the fact that all of these very well-recognized and well-respected and well-researched organizations all agree...
Asterisk has donated asterisk $10.
I'm sorry, Somniastatic, but unfortunately, website donations don't work with TTS. It has to be through Streamlabs. But notice that Ben Shapiro didn't even answer her question, right? Her question was, how do you reconcile the overwhelming consensus of the scientific community and all these organizations agreeing sex and gender aren't the same thing, that they are disconnected, that sex is disconnected from gender, that trans people are valid, that gender dysphoria does exist, that the treatment for gender dysphoria, the best treatment, is to accept trans people in society. This does result in a decrease in their suicide rates and their suicidal ideation, things such as self-harm and thoughts of self-harm, depression, etc. We've all found these things drop massively when you introduce acceptance of trans people and their identity into society, and when you just view them and treat them as the gender they identify as. We found overwhelmingly that this helps them. And that was the question that she was asking. And Ben Shapiro, his response to that was instead...
My wife is a conglomeration of 777,777,777 gorillion and 77 doctors.
True.
Fuck Sonic.
True. Also, so instead, Ben's argument was to say, oh, here's the thing Matt Walsh likes to say, define woman without saying the word woman. Okay, Ben.
Masculinity can be different from biology in the sense that biology is just pure male or pure female, but to suggest that there is such a thing as an effeminate male is not to suggest that an effeminate male is now a woman. Transgenderism makes the argument that if you believe that you are a woman, you are therefore a woman. Or if you believe that you are a man, you are therefore a man. I disagree with this. There are objective measures as to whether you're a man or...
So,
Xander Hall
what
X
is
Shadow the Hedgehog X Sonic the Hedgehog sex tape incoming. Zan's the top, obviously.
True. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so... when we talk about like society and whether or not we view someone as being a woman or not, like it's completely subjective. What is a woman to one person is going to be not a woman to somebody else, right? Like it's completely a subjective standard that we've set, right? Like for many trans people, even like whether or not you're valid as being trans is subjective to them. Like you have maybe like for a lot of trans women or trans men, for them to view another trans person as being valid, I hate to admit it, but there are a lot more true scums out there in the trans community than I think the trans community online is willing to admit. Like I'd be willing to bet most trans people out in the world are probably what we would call true scum. Like most trans people probably disagree with the general left-leaning consensus online in the trans community that like non-binary people's identities are valid, okay? Like there's so much disagreement even within that community of like what is and isn't a woman and what makes it valid, right? Like for some trans people, you have to like pass well enough to be considered valid. Like what they'll consider you valid at is like whether or not you can walk down the street and everybody you walk past will see you and think you're a woman or think you're a man or whatever, right? Like that's what makes the difference to them. Like it's so subjective even within the trans community what makes a woman, what makes a man.
Or a woman. There are objective measures as to whether you are male or female. There's certainly a spectrum when with regard to effeminateness versus masculinity. That's certainly true, but that does not change the underlying sexual dichotomy that is the basis for all human reproduction. Yeah, you can answer.
Right. So this dichotomy is a false dichotomy that isn't supported.
Oh, notice, by the way, the crowd obviously is going to be clapping for Ben Shapiro. Like I said, very, very, I don't know why, but when I saw hashtag only, I could have sworn it was going to say OnlyFans, and I was about to say, oh my God, does Ben Shapiro have an OnlyFans? No, but yeah, what does biological sex and the ability to give birth have to do with gender, Ben? What instinctively, what distinctly does that have to do with gender? Why would you bring that up? Like, what does that have to do with the question that she asked?
Supported by any of the medical associations that I just named
Then
off.
let me
None
explain.
of the medical associations that I just named off would actually support the idea that gender is biological. This is something that's completely untrue within every single medical consensus.
Well, then I will just say that anyone who suggests that gender has no reference whatsoever to biology, it's not connected in any way to biology, is just full of shit. Because
see, he's too scared to acknowledge the question. He just can't do it. If anybody who says the thing I disagree with is full of shit, so that's his response. Instead of engaging with these organizations, these studies, Ben Shapiro, because he's got to push the line of, is going to say, anyone who says this, I think, is a fucking idiot. And then watch this. The audience is about to clap. Watch the audience eat this shit up. This wasn't even close to an argument against what she said. Watch the audience just eat it fucking up.
If the reason I there it is. And the reason that I say
then you actually just disagree with medical consensus
yes,
within the
I
Western
disagree.
nations.
Yes, I disagree with the false medical consensus driven by politically driven, quote unquote, doctors. If any doctor denies to me that there is a dichotomy between male and female, a sexual dichotomy between male and female, they are ignorant and they are letting their politics get in the way of their science. Anybody who suggests to you that there is such a thing, for example, as a pregnant male is not a doctor, they are an activist.
Wait, what? Who said there'd be a pregnant male? What? What? But it... Do you guys... Yeah, by the way, false medical consensus. They've let politics get ahead of science. This is what they'll do, by the way. You literally can never win, on the grounds of, facts, you can never win a debate with a conservative, because they will... Any studies, any data, anything that disagrees with their worldview, they will say, I don't care. They put politics before science. That's all they have to say is, I disagree with the scientists who did this study, and so I can just disregard this entire overwhelming consensus among the scientific community. They will literally never engage with reality. They physically cannot.
I'm very glad that none of these opinions are actually accepted in academia and haven't been for over 70 years. Synth is here on Twitter.
Okay, so the notion that they haven't been accepted for over 70 years is a bit...
I haven't seen this part of the clip. I actually haven't watched the full video. I've only seen that one little clip we just watched there on Twitter. So that was pretty dope. Synth is here on Twitter, by the way.
Bizarre one, considering they were accepted until about 5 minutes ago. And the basic idea that male and female do not exist runs counter to all mammalian biology. All of it, not just human. Are we to suggest that gender and sex are different in walruses? How does this work exactly?
I once again, guys, I want to make it very clear here. I once again want to remind every single one of you that what Ben Shapiro is saying right now has been thoroughly and beyond any sense of ambiguity debunked by the overwhelming consensus in the scientific community. The American Psychological Association, American Medical Association, American Psychoanalytic Association, the Human Rights Campaign, American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Osteopathic Pediatricians, the United Nations, the United Kingdom's National Health Service, among literally countless studies, meta-analyses, collections of dozens of studies that then took that data, put it all together in order to get an even bigger idea of a larger trend above what each of those individual studies could have achieved on their own. It is so above. Ben Shapiro is so over his head with the amount of data, studies, and scientific associations that disagree with every word about the trans topic that Ben Shapiro spews to his audience that he's not engaging with reality. I don't think you guys realize that. I don't think you guys realize the fact that conservatives, modern day conservatives, are constitutionally incapable of engaging with reality.
Are they different in bears? Anytime you have all mammalian reproduction.
Also, Ben, the talking point from the right for literally forever was that homosexuality was unnatural. And then we found out that animals can also be gay, and that there are gay relationships in the animal kingdom, okay? Until we discovered gay animals, the talking point from the right was, look at animals in nature. There's no gay animals. And then we discovered gay animals were a thing, and you all fucking rolled off of that, okay? The only reason you guys are using the there's no trans animals argument is because there's literally no way with our current ability of analyzing the wildlife to figure out whether or not an animal has gender dysphoria. We literally have no way of determining that. Like, obviously we can tell animals are gay in nature because we see like a male marmoset and a male marmoset fuck or whatever, but we don't know if marmosets have gender as a concept. For all we know, they're just monkey all day, right? We don't know if the animals in the animal kingdom are just thinking food and fuck all day, and so that's all they care about, and so they don't have gender dysphoria or gender. Humans, I like to think, are a little bit different. I like to think we as humans have perhaps evolved and developed beyond the point of most other animal species on Earth, and I think that maybe humans should be looked at a little bit more uniquely than wild animals living out in like the African fucking plains, you know?
Is rooted in the idea that there's a sexual dichotomy between male and female. To obscure that with all sorts of semantic word games about how you feel subjectively has no bearing on whether male and female are categories that exist. And if you're trying to define male and female with reference to any subjective category that cannot be identified by any metric whatsoever other than how you feel today, I challenge whether that is scientific or whether that is merely a self-perception that is being guided by a political agenda.
So if you're wondering why what Ben Shapiro said just made absolutely zero sense, it's because Ben Shapiro is Jewish, and the normal conservative out with this question, which would just be the Jews fuck with the data, he can't use that because he himself is Jewish and he's like a Zionist and everything, and that would really not go well for him. So he doesn't get to, Ben Shapiro specifically can't use the Jews fudge the data. He doesn't get to use that excuse, so that's why he had to go on with a completely unrelated Gish Gallop on something that has absolutely nothing to do with the question she just asked. Whew! Wow. God damn. Should we read the comments? Do you guys think we can handle the comments? Because I'm pretty sure they're going to be... The fact that we have to have these debates on whether male and female exist is absolutely absurd. Terrifying. They're not a doctor. They're an activist. That's good shit. It still amazes me this is a conversation we're having as a species. Why is this even a topic for discussion? It's ridiculous. Shapiro just saying what 99% of the planet thinks. The fact that this person actually shouted out their own Twitter says it all. Really? It's good to know Ben fights for sanity in this crazy world we live in. I wish that person answered that what a woman is. The mental gymnastics would have been fascinating. These organizations can say whatever they want. They don't override something called reality. If these people had their way, there would be no just broad understanding of what is legit. We would if these people had their way, then we would live in a society where roughly half of everybody believes that the earth is flat and the sky is green, that's the world that we would be living in. Yeah, this is what happens when we let Christians control our fucking education. Yeah, true. Fucking true. You know what they did? Guys, in Florida, do you know what they didn't teach when I was a kid? When I was growing up in Florida? Do you want to know some things that they never taught me in school growing up in Florida? Not at all. Not once. They never taught the Civil War being about slavery or if the South started it. They never taught that evolution was real. They never taught that. Not when I was in school. They never taught that evolution was definitively real. Not once. Not when I was in school. Nope. I'm 22 years old, and not once in school did I ever, not until I was homeschooled, did I learn about evolution. I didn't learn about intelligent design. They didn't teach about either. That was the compromise. That was in the Florida education system when I was in school. We weren't quite at teaching intelligent design, and we weren't quite at teaching evolution. We were somewhere in the middle where they just don't teach where we came from. They just never once acknowledged it. I had a couple of teachers that were willing to give their opinions on it, but they were but I don't want to talk too much about it, not trying to get in trouble. So we never learned about evolution in school, not until I was in homeschool and I was in high school. Most of my knowledge I learned about evolution came from not school, came from documentaries and completely independent education outside of public schooling. That's where I learned most of my information about it, dinosaurs, evolution, all that kind of shit. I live in Appalachia. I'm lucky my mom was eager to teach me actual reality. Yeah, Blackburn, could have been bad. Anyway, guys, big ups to my friend there. Really appreciate her going on there and just fucking blowing Ben Shapiro the fuck out. I think she blew Ben Shapiro the fuck out. I think Danny did it. I do admit that maybe there was some points where she could have just been a little bit better there, but obviously when you're in the heat of the moment and you're in a debate with fucking Ben Shapiro and he's up on the stage and you're surrounded by a bunch of people that might literally try to physically assault you after you finish this debate. Let's be real here. Did at least one of those guys not look like the type of dude that would try to ambush her on her way out of this convention, try to beat her to death? Like, let's be fucking real here. Like, this is the type of audience that we're talking about here. These people have a deep, seething hatred for anybody different than them, okay? And they want to enact. If these people took power, they would kill every single one of us, okay? Everybody who's from left-leaning to queer to non-white to anything like that, they would kill every single one of you systemically with camps if they could take enough power, okay? That is what they would do the second they had the ability to do it, all right? But yeah, anyway, very brave of her to go on here and challenge Ben Shapiro. I'm super fucking proud, and I think that she did pretty well.